The courtroom buzzed with the low hum of conversations and shuffling papers, as if anticipation itself had taken a seat on every wooden bench. The double doors opened with a heavy creak, and Officer Amanda Harlow strode in like she was walking onto a red carpet rather than entering a hall of justice. Her steps were sharp, calculated, almost defiant. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a flawless bun beneath her police hat, her blue uniform ironed to crisp perfection. The click of her polished boots echoed louder than it should have in that sacred space. People turned their heads. Some leaned in to whisper. Others frowned at her demeanor. Amanda didn't glance at the judge's bench as she took her place. She acted as if the room was beneath her, every person in it, irrelevant. Her eyes skimmed the faces like a queen surveying commoners. Even the defendant, seated quietly beside his lawyer, wasn't worth more than a flick of her gaze. Judge Malachi Jordan sat elevated in his seat. A tall, dark-skinned man with a dignified face and a calm that was sharper than any blade. His black robe draped over his frame like armor. Years of serving in a system riddled with inequality had hardened him in ways that didn't require raised voices or clenched fists. His strength was in his silence. His eyes, deep-set and observant, followed Amanda with cool intensity. "Court is now in session," the bailiff declared. Judge Jordan picked up the gavel and tapped it once. "Officer Harlow, you may take the stand." Amanda sat and crossed her legs, the sound of the chair scraping echoing through the room. Her mouth was set in a faint smirk, a clear message: this is routine. "I've done this before. Let's get this over with. I assume you've reviewed your testimony?" the judge asked. She shrugged slightly. "Of course. This is pretty straightforward." "Then let's proceed," he said, giving a nod to the opposing counsel. The defense attorney, Maya Wallace, stood. She was petite but sharp, dressed in a navy blue suit that contrasted beautifully with her brown skin. Her reputation as a fierce civil rights attorney preceded her. "Officer Harlow, you detained 17-year-old Malcolm Reeves on the evening of May 12. Is that correct?" Amanda tilted her head. "Yes. And can you walk us through the events that led to his arrest?" Amanda sighed as though she were being forced to explain something trivial. "He was loitering outside a convenience store in a high-crime area. I approached him. He acted suspicious, put his hands in his pockets. I gave verbal commands. He didn't follow them immediately. So, I subdued him for officer safety." "And by subdued, you mean slammed him against a wall and handcuffed him?" "I followed department procedure," she replied curtly. Maya didn't flinch. "Are you saying that failure to remove hands from one's pockets is considered an act of aggression?" "In that context, yes." "What context?" Maya pressed. Amanda's eyes narrowed. It was late at night. High crime zone. He fit the profile. Profile of what? Amanda paused for a beat too long. Of someone who might be carrying. Judge Jordan leaned forward ever so slightly, but still said nothing. Maya stepped closer. "So, he was a black teenager, in a hoodie, in your idea of a bad neighborhood, and you decided that was probable cause for a physical takedown." Amanda's voice hardened. "I made a judgment call. One I've made many times. And how often have those judgment calls ended in bruised ribs and false charges?" "Objection," Amanda snapped. "That's speculative. You're not the one who makes objections," Judge Jordan said, speaking for the first time since the questioning began. His voice was quiet, but it silenced the room like thunder. Amanda stiffened. Her jaw clenched. She didn't like being checked, especially not by a man she clearly didn't respect. "Apologies, Your Honor," Maya said smoothly. "Proceed," he replied. Maya turned back. "Let's talk about your body cam. Why was it turned off during the arrest?" Amanda's expression shifted slightly. "Just a flicker of discomfort. There was a malfunction. Is that documented?" "It wasn't noted in the report, no." "And why not?" "I forgot." "Interesting. Because the convenience store across the street had full video coverage." "Did you know that?" Amanda blinked. "No." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Because in that footage, Officer Harlow, we see Malcolm Reeves standing still. Talking. Not moving aggressively. And we see you approach him, shout something unintelligible, then shove him against the brick wall." Amanda crossed her arms. "The footage doesn't capture the full interaction." Maya folded her arms too, mirroring her. "It captures enough. Judge Jordan held up a hand. Ms. Wallace, you will provide that footage for review. It's been submitted to the court, she replied. The judge nodded, then turned to Amanda. Officer Harlow, I'd remind you again, you are under oath. Amanda gave a tight smile. I'm well aware, sir. Again, the courtroom stirred. She didn't say, Your Honor. She didn't even make an attempt to show respect. The court reporter's fingers paused briefly on the keys. The bailiff shifted slightly in place. Judge Jordan simply looked at her. Not a word. Just a look that lingered longer than necessary. A heavy silence filled the room. You may continue, he said at last, his voice even. But people noticed. The gallery had caught on. This wasn't a normal case. Something unspoken passed between everyone in that room. Something deeper than legal arguments. Amanda was unraveling. Slowly. She thought her badge granted her untouchable power. She'd walked in believing this was just another formality. But Judge Jordan's silence wasn't passivity. It was precision. And Maya, she wasn't here to argue, she was here to reveal. Outside, the storm clouds had begun to gather. The first rumble of thunder sounded faintly through the courthouse windows. Inside, the storm had already begun. Amanda shifted in her seat again. For the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. She looked around and realized something else. She wasn't in control anymore. The courtroom she thought she could walk through like a conqueror had turned into a stage. And on that stage, her every word was being weighed, not just by the judge but by the people. And no badge could save her from the truth. Judge Jordan looked down at his notes, then back at Amanda. We'll resume after a short recess, he said. 15 minutes. He banged the gavel once and stood. As he turned to leave the bench, he paused just long enough to glance back at Amanda. Just one look. A look that said, you may have power, but I have the law. And that changed everything. The bailiff stepped forward. Court is in recess. Amanda sat there, shoulders a bit lower, the courtroom slowly emptying behind her. She wasn't smirking anymore. She was thinking, because for the first time, she knew, she wasn't the most powerful person in that room. The 15-minute recess came and went like a breath held too long. As people filtered back into the courtroom, the energy in the air had shifted. The gallery, once murmuring and fidgety, now sat with a hushed anticipation. Everyone had seen something, felt something, in the earlier exchange. What began as a routine excessive force hearing had turned into a subtle war of character, power, and truth. Amanda Harlow re-entered the room with her posture a little less proud, though she tried to conceal it. Her stride was slightly slower, and there was a faint tension in her jaw. Maybe it was the weight of being under scrutiny, or maybe it was the unexpected resistance she had encountered, not just from the defense, but from the bench. Either way, something in her had shifted, even if she wasn't willing to admit it. Judge Malachi Jordan returned to his seat, his robe flowing behind him like a wave of gravity. He didn't look at Amanda as he sat. His attention was on the files before him, the law books stacked neatly to his right, the notes he'd jotted during the testimony. But the silence with which he entered was power enough. Even the creaking wood seemed to bow beneath his presence. Ms. Wallace, he said, glancing toward the defense table. You may proceed. Maya Wallace rose, the very picture of composure. She was careful, her steps calculated as she approached the center. The video file had already been submitted to the court, but the big reveal was still pending. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to play the body cam adjacent footage submitted from the convenience store's security system. Judge Jordan nodded without looking up. Granted. The clerk dimmed the courtroom lights. A projector flickered on, illuminating the white screen installed beside the judge's bench. Amanda shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing as the footage began to roll. The video wasn't high quality, but it didn't need to be. The camera angle caught the corner of the store where Malcolm Reeves stood, hood up, hands loosely in his hoodie pocket, sipping a soda and checking his phone. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't looking around nervously. He wasn't doing anything threatening. Just standing there, like any other teen. And then, in the lower corner of the frame, Amanda's patrol cruiser pulled up. What followed happened quickly. Amanda exited her vehicle, walked straight toward him, and said something that wasn't audible. Malcolm seemed startled, responding with a visible flinch. He pointed to his drink. She shouted something, stepped forward, and grabbed him by the arm. When he instinctively pulled back, she slammed him against the brick wall, cuffed him, and shoved him toward the car. That was it. The lights came back on. The silence was thunderous. Amanda didn't speak. Maya turned to the judge. No threat. No weapon. No act of aggression. Just a 17-year-old drinking a soda in front of a store. Judge Jordan clasped his hands. Officer Harlow, would you like to revise your testimony in light of this footage? Amanda swallowed hard, but her voice was still brittle with defiance. That footage doesn't include audio. You don't know what he said. But we know what you did, Maya cut in. We saw what you did. Amanda turned toward her, frustration bleeding into her tone. You don't know what it's like out there. One wrong move can be the difference between life and death. I don't get the luxury of hesitation. You do get the luxury of responsibility, Judge Jordan said firmly. And accountability. Amanda stared at him, biting her lip. Her arms folded, not out of arrogance now, but as if trying to guard herself from something unraveling inside her. Maya continued, Officer Harlow, you've made 123 arrests in the past 3 years. Of those, 78% were young black men. How do you explain that? Because I patrol a high-crime area, Amanda shot back. And statistically, that's who I encounter. Or perhaps it's who you choose to see as a threat. I follow the data, she argued, louder than she meant to. You follow your bias, Maya said, eyes burning with righteous fire. The room was breathless. Judge Jordan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Let me remind you both, he said slowly, this courtroom is not a battlefield. But we are here to confront a war, one that's been waged for generations in silence and shadow. He turned to Amanda. Officer Harlow, do you know what I did before I wore this robe? She blinked, surprised by the question. No, sir. I was a public defender. For 12 years. I sat beside boys like Malcolm. I visited them in jail cells that smelled like fear and despair. I saw their bruises, heard their mothers cry. I watched their futures vanish before they even knew what adulthood tasted like. Amanda didn't respond. I also sat in courtrooms like this, Judge Jordan continued, and watched officers like you testify with that same indifference. That same practiced language, high crime area, suspicious behavior, non-compliant. He leaned forward. But what I never saw, until now, was a court willing to stare that language in the face and say, enough. Amanda's jaw tightened, her knuckles white on the armrests of her chair. She didn't blink, but the bravado was gone. Maya stepped forward again. Your Honor, I respectfully request that the charges against Malcolm Reeves be dropped immediately and that this court consider referring Officer Harlow's actions for internal investigation. Motion is under consideration, Judge Jordan said. The footage is damning. The testimony, troubling. Amanda snapped, her voice cracking under the pressure. So, that's it. One mistake and I'm thrown under the bus. One mistake, Maya said, turning sharply. Tell that to Malcolm. Tell that to his future, one police report away from being labeled a delinquent. One arrest away from being disqualified from scholarships. Tell him this is just one mistake. Amanda stood now, no longer composed. I put my life on the line every day. Do you think that's easy? I go out there, I see things, horrible things, and I'm expected to come back smiling. And that justifies brutality? Judge Jordan asked. No, she snapped. But you sit up there, judging me from your desk like you've never made a hard decision. The courtroom gasped. Even Amanda seemed to realize, too late, what she'd just said. Judge Jordan stood. He didn't shout. He didn't slam the gavel. He just spoke. Respect in this courtroom is not optional, Officer Harlow. Nor is truth. You swore an oath to serve and protect, not profile and punish. This is not about a hard decision. This is about an easy one. It was easy for you to see Malcolm as a threat. Easy for you to throw him against a wall. Easy to believe you'd never be questioned. What's hard is accountability. What's hard is change. Amanda's voice was barely audible. You don't understand. No, he said, stepping around the bench now, standing before her like a titan. You don't understand. Because if you did, you'd have looked at that boy and seen a child, not a criminal. You'd have remembered your badge was a shield, not a sword. A tear slipped down Amanda's cheek. She quickly wiped it away. I didn't mean for it to go that far. But it did, Judge Jordan said. Maya stood silent now, watching as the moment unfolded. You want to talk about fear. The judge continued. You're afraid of what might be in someone's pocket. Malcolm was afraid of what was in yours, your authority. Amanda opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. You're dismissed from the stand, Judge Jordan said at last. Amanda returned to her seat slowly, the courtroom dead silent. Not out of fear, but reflection. The weight of what had been said, what had been shown, pressed down on every soul present. Judge Jordan returned to his bench. This court will reconvene tomorrow morning to announce its ruling. But let it be known today, and forevermore, that justice is not blind, it is watching. Closely. He struck the gavel once. The sound echoed like a verdict in itself. Court was adjourned. But nothing would ever be the same.